Jordan, the blessed land that has witnessed the passage of different nations and great civilizations throughout history. The land is named after the holy Jordan River, through which the river passes. The word Jordan means influence and dominance. Nations like the Amorites, the Edomites, the Moabites, the Ammonites, and the Bashaneans have had it as their homeland and left their prince in it. The land has also been inhabited by the Arab Nabateans, the Romans, the Byzantines, and the Arab Islamic rule that still exists until our times. The era of the modern Jordanian state, which started to evolve back in February 1923 and gained independence from Britain in May 1946. God has blessed Jordan with many great features. The geographical location is a strategic one in which the two continents of Asia and Africa meet. Nature in it is magnificent. A case in point is Wadi Rum, and Jordan's people are known for their generosity, tolerance, dignity, humanity, and modernity. The land is blessed because it witnessed the passage of the three prophets of the monolithic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Not only that, but the land has also witnessed major events that had to do with the evolution of these Abrahamic religions in which their disciples took part in, and the civilizations that had settled in Jordan during the different periods made of the country a one-of-a-kind museum on the face of the earth. Prophet Moses and his brother Aaron stood on Mount Nebo, near the Jordanian city of Madaba. It is believed that Prophet Moses' tomb is on that mountain. Jesus Christ, the Son of Mary, was baptized near the Jordan River, which denoted the launch of his message, the message of mercy and compassion. And he even wandered with his mother, preaching in the land and living in its caves. Prophet Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, visited Jordan among the traders from his tribe, Quraysh, which used to travel from the Arabian Peninsula for trade in the Levant. Jordan is the only spot on earth that can be said to have witnessed the passage of the three prophets of the Abrahamic religions, Moses, Jesus Christ, and Muhammad. The traveler in Jordan finds that the land is full of evidence of religious and historical events. I have always thought that the tourism sector in Jordan is one of the most important sectors of the economy and must be given the importance it deserves. It is true that the tourism sector accounts for about 14% of the gross domestic product. But I was always convinced that the Jordanian state should work on further enhancing this sector because this reflects positively on the national economy. More tourism investments in the tourism sector means more job opportunities for Jordanians. Not only that, but when people from different parts of the world come to Jordan and get acquainted with Jordanians, they go back with an appreciation of the prevalent norms in this country with Muslim majority that makes of it a bright example of how people of different religious and ethnic backgrounds live in a harmonious and cooperative environment that contributes to the achievement of the homeland's sublime objectives. As I move around the country with my parents and brothers to get acquainted with the land and the people, I came to a conclusion that this homeland is a blessing of life that deserves our efforts to preserve the human heritage that is scattered across its plains, mountains, and valleys. I traveled all parts of the Jordanian homeland, from Ramtha in the north to Aqaba in the south, and from Al-Azraq in the east to the Jordan River in the west. I visited the archaeological and religious sites in Petra, Jarash, the sites of great historical battles, Mu'ta and Yarmouk, the shrines of the Companions, Mount Nebo, and the baptism site. When visiting the baptism site of Jesus Christ, which has been proven to be the exact site that Jesus has been baptized in, what drew my attention was that many more pilgrims come to a site west of the Jordan River, whose founders claim to be the place of the baptism of Jesus. According to statistics from the Jordanian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, in 2016, around 82,000 people visited the actual site on the east bank of River Jordan, while the alleged location on the west bank of River Jordan, around 791,000 people visited during the same year. That is almost 10 times more. In my research and inquiry, I knew that the adequate advertising and marketing are the difference between the two sites' capacity to attract visitors and tourists. The real location of the baptism site is on the eastern side of the River Jordan, needs more marketing using the discerned archaeological facts about it. 5 popes acknowledged this site by visiting it. Increasing the number of visitors to the baptism site to the right potential of the location will have great economic benefits to the country. Also, great benefits accrue when international visitors come to the country and witness the prevailing tranquil coexistence between the two great religions, Islam and Christianity, that has existed since Islam spread in this land more than 1,400 years now. Arab Christians and Arab Muslims share the homeland in harmony. A remarkable example of how followers of the two great religions live peacefully and defeat the arguments that explain human interaction on this earth as episodes in what they call the clash of civilizations. The baptism site is 25 kilometers away from the city of As-Salt, the city that sits on the western mountains of Transjordan. As-Salt is the hometown of my ancestors from the Nsour family since the mid of the 16th century, which makes my city the nearest city in Jordan to the birthplace of Christianity. The baptism site, the Bethany beyond the Jordan, is the place where Jesus Christ was baptized by John the Baptist when he was conducting his ministry. The evidence has been unveiled during the archaeological excavations since 1996 in Wadi al-Kharrar and found to be congruent with the facts that were contained in the biblical texts, the writings of Byzantine historians and medieval historians. These writings all show that the baptism site is located east of the Jordan River in the land today known as the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. The Gospel of John speaks of Bethany beyond the Jordan, where John the Baptist baptized, and the term beyond the Jordan is referred to the eastern bank of the river. The question is, how does this place not become a sanctuary for the Christian pilgrimage? As I always say, it has 2 fundamental benefits to Jordan. First, it is purely economic when the number of tourists coming to Jordan increases. The second is cultural, when Christians from all over the world come to see the common living between Muslim Arabs and Christian Arabs, dispelling the argument of intolerance of the Islamic faith. I began my inquiry with interviews with active personalities in the tourism sector in Jordan, who have real prints in taking the sector in the country forward. I first met with Dr. Muhammad Wahib, professor of archaeology at the Hashemite University in Jordan, who discovered, with his team, the baptism site. In fact, Dr. Wahib discovered many historical and religious sites that make of Jordan a place of unparalleled historical, religious, and cultural richness. I asked him, how was the baptism site discovered, and what is its significance?
The site of Jesus' baptism on the eastern bank of Jordan River was discovered in 1996. We conducted an intensive field survey, discovering that we have at least 20 archaeological sites dated back to classical period, which is Roman and Byzantine. And then the mission from the Department of Antiquities in cooperation with other services started the mission of field excavations, squares and test trenches and soundings, and then we found the remains of the pottery, the glasses, the coins, the lamps and other remains dated back to the Roman and Byzantine period. We know that John the Baptist lived during the Roman period and also Jesus Christ when they met together in that area. So we found there a lot of churches with mosaic floors decorated with inscriptions and other geometrical and floral designs, and we found caves of monks. We found also channels of water, cisterns, wells. So we found there a site, a big site. It's called Bethany beyond the Jordan, according to the Gospels of John chapter 1 verses number 28. So we found the place where Jesus Christ baptized on the eastern bank of Jordan River, according to the Gospels, archaeological discoveries, and also pilgrims and the travelers' description.
I asked him, are there other sites in Jordan related to the Christian faith? And are they as important as the baptism site?
Yes, we have a lot of sites, archaeological sites related to the baptism site. So because Bethany beyond the Jordan, where Jesus was baptized and where he met John the Baptist, related and connected with strong relations with other sites and other settlements in North Jordan, Central Jordan, and in Southern Jordan. So we have churches in North Jordan, in Jadara, where it's called Qais, where Jesus kept in a cave with other disciples when they traveling from Jerusalem, from West Bank to East Bank, crossing Tiberia Lake. So we have there a lot of remains dated to the Jesus period. And also we have in Amman, they discovered a lot of churches related to the baptism site, related to the Byzantine period. The Byzantine period started from the 4th to 6th century. We have pilgrims and travelers describe these remains when they visited Jordan during the 18th, 19th century, and they described all details about the Christianity and the start of the Christianity in the Jordanian land. So we have really a lot of strong connections with other facilities existed here and there all over Jordan. Really, the baptism site is the core of Bethany beyond the Jordan, but we have another scattered sites here and there. So once you go through the valleys and the wadis here in Jordan, you will find monks' caves and you will find monasteries. You find churches, you find settlements, huge settlements here and there. So really there are a lot of sites connected with the baptism site here on the eastern bank. And also we have another sites connected to the baptism site on the western bank with Jerusalem, where Jesus also spent a lot of his time there and where he was finished his journey over there.
I asked him, what can the Jordanian state do to propel the site to the deserving religious and cultural significance?
The baptism site deserves to be promoted and marketed much more than now. So we have a wealth of excavations there. We have a lot of remains scattered all over the site. We have churches, we have water installations, we have mosaics, we have artifacts, and we should start building a museum in the baptism site. We should organize the visitor circulation there much more than now, and we have also a lot of opportunities to reach the markets all over the world. So we need a new technology, a new methods of marketing and promotion, and we need really a help from other devices and other agencies all over the world, because this site is not for the Jordan and Jordanians or for the Arabs. It is a site for all humanity all over the world. So really we need to promote this site depending on the scientific research methods.
It is worth mentioning that the baptism site is under the guardianship of a royal commission headed by Prince Ghazi ibn Muhammad, a direct cousin of the King of Jordan, King Abdullah II ibn al-Hussein. The symbolism of the presence of a Muslim Arab prince as head of a supervising commission to the baptism site of Jesus Christ is immense. How can't it be when we know that Prince Ghazi is a direct descendant of the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad? Prince Ghazi enthusiastically works to maintain and develop the birthplace of Christianity, the baptism site. The visitor to the baptism site gets impressed with the knowledge of the staff there, such as the director, Mr. Sulaiman al-Farajat, and his assistant, Mr. Abdulaziz al-Idwan. Also, the expert at the site, Mr. Rustam Mukhajian, who gave me a detailed explanation of the site and its importance.
We are now present at the point with a great message. We are at the point where, as his eighth Majesty King Hussein said, that's important for mankind as a heritage that's been discovered as a result of the peace treaty. Now, why is this point ever so important? Because we know, depending on three sources, that this is the point where John met Jesus and Christianity started. If you like, let's go back to the source that tell us about that. Now, what does the Bible tell us about John? It's very clear. Luke chapter 1 verse 17 says that John the Baptist came in the spirit and strength of Elijah, Nabi Ilyas alayhi salam. Now, Elijah, according to the Old Testament, 2 Kings chapter 2, came from Jericho, that's to the west, 13 kilometers away, crossed the holy Jordan, and was taken up to heaven in charioted horses of fire in a whirlwind. Now, the last sentence, the last verse in the Old Testament says that Elijah will be sent once again. But Luke chapter 1 verse 17 has clarified the issue. John came and continued the message. Now, John, as we know, was called the Baptist because physically he lived in a cave on Elijah's hill where Elijah was taken up to heaven, and there's a spring where he baptized the believers. That's when people living in villages surrounding Bethany beyond Jordan, the biblical name of the site, ask him, "Are you Elijah? Are you the Messiah?" He says, "I'm a crying voice in the wilderness, preparing the way for the Lord." Indeed, we as a Royal Commission headed by His Royal Highness Prince Ghazi, we are proud that we've preserved the wilderness of John the way John and Jesus saw. We did not and never should we turn it to a touristic site, but rather a baptism site and a pilgrimage site. Specifically knowing that this site, Bethany beyond Jordan, was on the early Christian pilgrimage road between Jerusalem to the west and Mount Nebo where Moses died. So pilgrims following the trails of the prophets continuously throughout history visited this site, leaving us with their important notes. And these pilgrims are found in a series of books called Palestine Pilgrims Text Society, 6 volumes where we have hundreds of pilgrims who describe what we're seeing right now. Now, let's also remember an important point. We do know, scientifically speaking, that the River Jordan surrounded these remains. The alluvial material we see in the background here is formations of different floods that kept destroying some of the churches at this point. Now let's go back to the Bible and see what happened when John receives Jesus at this point at the River Jordan. There's an argument where John says, "Who am I to baptize? I'm not worthy to untie his shoelaces." But eventually when he baptizes Jesus, that's the moment when Jesus starts his ministry at the age of 30. So that's the moment Christianity physically starts. That is why our ancestors want to mark this important event and spot. They want to build churches to mark this event, as I was saying. They had a big problem. How to build churches in a place they have the huge river then? Now the only engineering solution is piling system, like the one we're sitting on. We have here a set of 4 piles over which a chapel was described by a pilgrim called Arco. Even the steps that we see behind us, they were described by the same pilgrim, and Antoninus from Piacenza too described them too. Now, I'd like to remind ourselves of what Arco said. He said if a tall man goes down the steps, the water of the Jordan would arrive to his chest in summer and would cover his head in winter, but in times of big floods it would totally immerse the mantle chapel that is risen high on 4 piers. We know the chapel was right there because we found the remains of the vault system over which the chapel was. So we're talking about a chapel that's around 10 meters from where we're standing right now. It was a memorial chapel, not a place to pray, but a memorial for the important event. Now, what's more interesting is the shape of water between the 4 piers. It's a cross. Now, we do know in archaeological field that baptistries in the Byzantine period, in the early Christian period, were cruciform, in shape of a cross. So it makes this the only largest cruciform baptistry on earth that used the River Jordan water for people to be baptized in. Now we know we have 2 churches described by pilgrims that were built on piling system. They were both destroyed because of earthquakes. You know, the Jordan Valley Rift from the Galilee down to the Red Sea is an earthquake zone. So the churches were destroyed because of earthquakes. But they did not give up. They continued building churches even in Islamic period. Now they changed the design. Instead of having their churches on piers, they had them on the ground. But we have 2 basilicas over there and the small chapel described by Daniel of Russia that were built but destroyed because of earthquakes, floods of the Jordan, I beg your pardon. So in short, let's sum up what we have. We have remains of 5 churches that are uniquely designed and a unique cruciform baptistry in a place we don't have a community to serve. So we ask ourselves a simple question. Why did they insist to build one church after the other, challenging the force of nature, earthquakes and floods that kept destroying all these churches? Now, depending on the Bible, pilgrims' accounts and the archaeological discoveries, because this is where Jesus baptized and Christianity started. Welcome to the lowest archaeological discovery on earth, but closest to heaven.
That is truly fascinating. This report will not be complete without an interview with Mr. Aql Biltaji, a former Minister of Tourism, a man who has excelled in presenting the inspirational qualities of Jordan and its people to the world, and who has played a prominent role in highlighting the baptism site and its importance.
Jordan is the land of the sunrise of faith. It is the base, grounds, and spirit of the 3 monotheistic religions. It is in Jordan where Abraham first came to rescue his nephew Lot. It is in Jordan where Jacob got his name changed to Israel. It is in Jordan where Moses brought his people to see the promised land. It is in Jordan where Jesus came to be baptized by John the Baptist. It is in Jordan where Muhammad the prophet, the last of the prophets, in Mayfa, Rasas, where he was met by Bahira, the priest, where the prophecy of his mission and revelation came to be. That is why Jordan is the land of the sunrise of faith. It was, has been, and will continue to be. Running away from the persecution in Jerusalem at the time, and where he went for the rituals of baptism, and then Jesus comes around all the way from Case and along the east side of the River Jordan to come around to Beit Abara, to Bethany to be baptized. Now, the importance is that this is where the ministry of Jesus starts. So the church started there. Bethlehem is the birth of Jesus. Beit Bara, Bethany beyond the Jordan, the baptism site, is the birth of Christianity. Since then, we've had 3 popes visit the sites. And when we're talking about the popes, we're talking about John, Paul II, later on canonized as a saint, and that was in the year 2000. Later on, the Pope Benedict XVI in 2009, and later on 2015, Pope Francis I. And before that, Pope Paul VI in 1964 visited Jordan, but also the Coptic Church, both Pope Shenouda and then Tawadros, but all, literally all heads of churches in the world have visited the site. And by the way, the site is also recognized by Muslims as a holy site.
The Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities in Jordan has seen ministers who deeply recognized the importance of the baptism site and exerted serious efforts to lead the site to occupy the prominence that it deserves. Most notably among those ministers is Mr. Naif Hamedi Al-Faiz. I conducted an illuminating interview with him.
Today we are proud of the baptism site. This is a site that has been listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, not only for the importance of the religious aspects, but also a message of peace and that is sent out from Jordan to the whole world. Jordan has been looked at as a symbol of unity between religions. Between Islam and Christianity. We think of that as a historical thing, not something that's new for Jordan. We are proud of that. We are sure that the baptism site is the location of the birth of Christianity. It is important for both religions. And actually it's important for all humanity. This is why all the visits that are conducted to the site, they are looked at as either pilgrimage to the site or as a historical visit. Being under the UNESCO World Heritage Committee, it is not the only protection that Jordan has given to this location. It is from Jordan there has been something that is more important as Jordanians, where it is under the supervision of His Majesty himself. The baptism site is one of the few locations that are under the supervision of the royal family, His Majesty, and he has appointed his cousin to be directly in charge of it. At the same time, a committee of appointees by His Majesty oversees this important site that has been preserved as much as possible. And we look forward that this site will continue to be the symbol of peace and love that is sent out of this region.
One of the dynamic former ministers of tourism and antiquities in Jordan was Dr. Nidal Al-Qatamin, who left clear prints on the tourism sector. During my interview with him, he provided me with very important highlights.
I think probably when considering historical research across all libraries of the world, you probably come across Jordan being the most important strategic location ever, in terms of the fact that Jordan was called Transjordan because it has actually had a number of civilizations living and passing through Jordan. Each civilization stayed here in Jordan at least 350 to 400 years of time. And each civilization has left us with a lot of ruins, a lot of archaeological sites, a lot of history. And those are actually the makeup of the history since mankind. If we look into Jordan as a map, you would see 5 civilizations, you would see 5 kingdoms, the kingdom of Moabite and Edomite, and the kingdom of Nabateans, and the kingdom of Amorite, and the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. Jordan has a wealth of touristic locations, and all of which have different flavors. They can range between temperatures, for example, reaching snow level down to the Dead Sea, where humidity and the high temperature are in existence. And therefore, when you look at Jordan as a whole, as a package, probably it could offer for any tourist any anything that he is looking for or she's looking for. Now, if we look at Jordan again from a religious point of view, we can see that most of the prophets that we know of have actually either passed through Jordan, particularly the river of Jordan, or died through in the river of Jordan, or were actually originated from there. I would like to focus on this part a little bit, because it is a very historic thing that the Christianity has all started in the river of Jordan, in the baptism site. This site has actually had a lot of stories. I mean, the time before what we call pre-Jesus, and obviously a number of prophets were there, the most important including Moses, where he stood in the mountains of Madara, which we call Mount Nebo, and looked into the promised land. The promised land, obviously, he was not allowed to go into. And he was, at the time, was the representative of the law. Was followed again by Prophet Joshua, who was also a prophet who crossed through the river of Jordan. Then we had Elijah and Elisha, those again prophets that were very important, particularly Elijah, when they were trying to follow the messages of Moses, but they were resisted, and obviously the people who were living here, they were actually living in different strange gods, as it were. Until hundreds of years later, we had John the Baptist. John the Baptist is a very important prophet, because he represents the last prophet in the Old Testament. And obviously during that time, he knew that there was Jesus about to come to earth, and then Jesus was actually living in Nazareth, which is in the other side of Jordan, and then he came to the baptism site wanting to be baptized. Baptism obviously is a very important component of Christianity, where people try to clean out their sins, people try to have repentance, and therefore at that time Jesus came to John the Baptist wanting to be baptized, and then at that point of time John the Baptist realized that that was Jesus, and then he asked him, why don't you baptize me, because you are the prophet? And he said, no, for this time let's just go on. And that was the date of the most important time in Christianity, when Christianity actually broke out. We should thank Ghazi, who was the one who actually initiated the investigation looking into the various components of the map, which actually existed in Madaba, because it did tell that there was some location in the Dead Sea, in the river of Jordan, where actually it's very important, and we should go into it and try to find out a little bit more of the existence of the baptism site. Indeed, they did a lot of digging. There were a lot of scholars coming into the region, and then they managed to find lots of caves, lots of potteries, and mosaics, and water systems, and water. And at that time, I think it was a huge discovery for Jordan and for humanity to actually discover the location of the site. The site is now very much looked after very well, but unfortunately it has not been marketed in the way that it should have been marketed. We believe that this important discovery should have had a little bit more attention in the form of attracting tourists to actually be able to invest in their visits to Jordan. It actually forms one of the 34 locations that are in existence now in the Bible. The Bible has 34 locations in Jordan that were actually visited either by Jesus or his mother or the disciples, and all of which had very nice stories. Those 34 locations, which were again discovered over the past 10 years, that they existed and that they were existed actually in the Bible, those locations were looked after in some means, but still room for improvement exists, unfortunately, because it takes a lot of finances to be able to put them to the public in the way they should be promoted. The baptism site, I think it's an important site because it's one of the most important 5 pilgrimage sites in the country. Again, they were all recognized by the Vatican, recognized by all Christians that these are very important pilgrimage sites. They should be visited. People should go to them and remember the stories associated with them. And again, they should be one of the most important tools for marketing. We have tried in the past in Jordan to look after a lot of touristic sites. We have too many of them. As everybody knows, Jordan is an open museum. Those locations require a lot of maintenance, require a lot of funding to put them into the right, if you like, image for us and in front of the tourists. And obviously they require a lot of facilities around them to be able to provide for the tourists. We don't have the funding to do so, unfortunately, and I don't think the culture of looking after a touristic site is almost a new culture. It takes time for people to realize that this is an important element of the infrastructure of the country. It is the most important resources for the country.
As I could tell, marketing the baptism site is a priority. It was necessary to go to the Jordanian Tourism Promotion Board to talk with its able director, Dr. Abdelrazak Arabiyat, about the programs that the board has to promote religious sites in general and the baptism site in particular.
Jordan Tourism Board is the marketing arm for the private and the government. So we, as Jordan Tourism Board, we have a strategy to promote the country. We are involved in all the marketing elements regarding presenting Jordan and promoting Jordan abroad. We have different offices. We call them marketing-based representative in different countries and the targeted segments. What we did so far, I would like to talk about what, as a JTB, what we did so far in terms of marketing. We changed our strategy in terms of, we used to have a geographic presence, so we were focusing on certain markets like the US market, UK market, Germany, France, etc. But now we changed the strategy where we identified our products in Jordan, the products that we have a competitive edge, a competitive advantage. Let's say the adventure tourism, we have a beautiful product that we can offer to our clients. The religious segment, which is definitely, we have a lot to offer in terms of the Islamic and the Christian segment. The medical and wellness, also the MICE, which is meeting, incentive, conferences and events. So we created the Convention Bureau recently, and the cultural and leisure segment. So we go into a demand-driven approach, not geographic. So the trend of the booking and the behavior of the tourists changed rapidly in the previous 3-4 years. So we react immediately to the change in the behavior of the markets, and we changed our strategy. So now we are focusing more on online. We have a strong presence in the online platforms. We have a partnership with Google, with TripAdvisor, Expedia, and of course we have a strong presence on the other social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And Jordan Tourism Board now considered one of the big top 10, let's say, tourism boards on the world in terms of we are active in the online, especially that we adopt a strategy to change the perception. It's part of the perception management that we adopt since the Arab Spring. So we invited a lot of influencers and social media active accounts to come to Jordan, and they wrote about the country and they conveyed the right message about the country, that Jordan is safe and we have a lot to offer, the authenticity of the country. All of these messages communicated in a proper way through these influencers to change the perception about the country.
One of the rich interviews that I had in my quest to investigate policies that ought to be in place to give the baptism site the prominence that it deserves was definitely with the Secretary General of the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, Mr. Isa Gammo. He gave me a detailed explanation of the economic importance of all forms of tourism in Jordan and the role of the Ministry of Tourism in developing the sector.
Well, present day Jordan strongly believe that tourism is the best engine for economic growth and for helping Jordanians' welfare and the standard of living in Jordan. So the Jordanian government is really committed for tourism development and for tourism economic development, and of course for the integration into rapidly globalized world economy. And through intensive reform process, Jordan is building a regulatory environment that embraces and empowers tourism, and it puts it at the forefront of the leading Middle Eastern and North African liberal economies. And despite instability in this region, Jordan has so far weathered the uncertainty and political situation in the region. And we have achieved what we have achieved, of course, not only against the backdrop of the instability of the region, but also in a world where competition is a key word for us, because at this stage, at this time, mediocrity is not an option for us. And the best testimony on this are the international reports that I would like to cite. The WEF report for tourism and travel. It ranks Jordan one of the top 32 countries in 3 major indices: in security and safety and police services, in doing or ease of doing business in tourism or establishing of a new tourism establishment and investment, and thirdly in attracting tourists. And most importantly, Jordan ranks number 19 out of 136 countries when it comes to commitment of the Jordanian government to attract tourists from an even wider audience of international markets, and the support of outreach and marketing activities of the Jordan Tourism Board, as well as preparing and making sure that we have the proper mix of product in Jordan to attract all type of tourists, whether religious, eco, leisure, travel, and MICE tourism, education tourism, cultural tourism. So we have a diversified product to be able, or to that the country can attract all type of tourists from the world. Figures reveal, according to the Central Bank of Jordan, the tourism revenue receipts have exceeded 4.2 billion US dollars, and the number of groups tourists to Jordan have increased by 46%, and this also reflected positively on the Jordanian economy and on the shops and investment that are currently operating under the tourism sector. Today we have more than 600 accommodations with 28,000 rooms available in Jordan. We have witnessed an increase of 22% in the number of investment establishment in Jordan, and we have witnessed an increase in the number of arrivals and visitors to our touristic sites, including the baptism site and the Petra, as well as Jarash, Ajloon, Madaba, Mount Nebo, and as well as Wadi Ram, and many others. Well, our land is a home for many important religious sites, both for Muslims and Christians. And for example, we are the home to 5 Vatican recognized or approved holy sites for pilgrimage, and equally important, the 5 UNESCO World Heritage sites, including one of the most important Christian holy sites in the world, where 2.5 billion Christians all over the world spiritually belongs to, and that is Bethany beyond the Jordan, the baptism site where Jesus Christ was baptized. It is also important to mention that in Jordan we have more than 45 holy Islamic shrines all over the country, and these shrines have a great story to tell. Many strategic battles were fought in Jordan, on the Jordanian land, and many Islamic leaders were martyred and buried in the Holy Land of Jordan. We say there is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has really come. Jordan, time to visit. Today, there are more than 300 million tourists, Christians, that they travel globally, and they spend more than 330 billion US dollars. It is believed that 10% of which are pilgrims. So in Jordan, we are capable of attracting in the near future 1% of the 300 million Christian tourists, and this makes it 3 million tourists a year that can be traveling to Jordan to visit our Christian holy sites.
Indeed, I wanted to have a contribution on raising awareness about the importance of tourism to Jordan, and also to encourage civilizational interaction between the citizens of Jordan and international communities. I took advantage of a visit in mid-2017 to Jordan by the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, the head of the English Church, to meet the Archbishop and convey to His Grace some of my ideas. I even gave him a letter in which I explained these ideas that I did share with him when I saw him. I introduced myself to him as a Jordanian Arab Muslim young lady whose family descends from the city of As-Salt, 25 kilometers away from the site of the birthplace of Christianity. I urged him to encourage the followers of the Church of England to come to Jordan for religious tourism. I emphasized the importance of this step, for it encourages the mutual understanding between cultures, let alone it propels Jordan's position as a preferred tourism destination. The Archbishop expressed his understanding of my exposition. With this, we come to the end of this documentary, in which we investigated the status of the baptism site as a destination for Christian tourism, its significance, and the policies that will have to be adopted to enhance the site's standing. I thank you for watching, and I wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you.